The international breaks are almost over. We're getting ready for Gameweek 4. And we're almost there. Saturday, 11 September, midday, South African time is the deadline. So we've got a few more days left to decide what our teams are going to look like. For those people who are wildcarding, you've still got enough time to beat price rises. Have a look at, see if you can extract some more team value out of your players as well. And then also look out for press conference to see if there's any players coming back injured or unavailable for the weekend. So Greg, what's your plans for this weekend? Any transfers or anything like that lined up?
I mean, at the moment, I'm just looking forward to watching some soccer again. It feels like it's been the longest 2 weeks of my life.
Yeah.
So far I haven't made any transfers. I've been really sort of holding off to wait and see what happens at the press conferences. Unfortunately, I've got 2 players flagged now. I've got Wilson and Son, who are both injury darts. So I'll have to wait and see what the news is basically on press conference day, and then decide what to do. Hopefully I don't have to take any hits, or I'm really hoping I can bank the transfer for next week.
Yeah, same here. I pulled the trigger early on my 2 free transfers. I got Bruno out for Greenwood and then Ings out for Jimenez. I think I felt like, okay, though Manchester United don't have the greatest fixture run coming up in the next few weeks, but I felt at 7.6 Greenwood would still be worth it. It's not like, he's not somebody that I'm looking to captain that frequently. So I think at the price, it was okay. I think it was fine. I justified it that way, put it, to bring him in. But as for Ings, I looked at the fixtures and I thought, you know what? I think it just made so much logical sense to get Raul Jimenez in. And but now, like you say, you have Wilson and Son flagged. I have Son flagged. But I also have 5 million in the bank, burning a hole in my pocket over there. So, unless anything drastic happens or if Son is injured, I'll make a transfer and take the -4. But if not, I'll think I'll probably just bank my transfer for 1 more week and keep the money in the bank and make my transfers next week.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's that's the problem with these international breaks, is that there are always these injuries, unfortunately, that pop up. But your transfers make complete sense. Ings, his fixtures are really terrible from now onwards. I think definitely time to get rid. Jimenez is going to have great fixtures for Wolves. And then Greenwood I've had from the start. So he's been my Fernandes cover, and it's really worked out well.
He's been more than just cover. He's exceeded him.
Exactly. And who would have thought after our first week when I was ruining the decision to not pick Bruno, and the plan actually worked nicely over 3 weeks.
Yeah, it just shows, FPL is all about long-term planning. If anybody can have one big week, but ultimately it's about consistency. And I think that's maybe the difference between, this is probably my best start to a season, like I think, we were talking about it during preseason. I've been taking it a little bit more seriously in terms of making data-driven decisions, since the season started. And because of that over there, I feel like, I'm in a situation now where I've planned my team out quite well, to the point where unless anything really strange happened, there was no reason for me to get forced into transfers and so on. And you know what, I'm so happy with my squad at the moment. Maybe I'll feel differently and I'll knee jerk on Saturday night. But yeah, look, at this point in time, really, really happy with what's going on so far. Yeah. And I'm just planning probably for around Gameweek 7 to decide what I'll do then. So yeah, now talking about Son being flagged, the first fixture to kick off the game week is Spurs away to Crystal Palace. Now, something I've heard, I think I was reading on Twitter earlier today, is that Son has one return, which was an assist for Kane like years back, and he's blanked every single fixture against Spurs since. What do you make of that? Do you ever look at situations like that and past performances in a specific fixture when deciding on a player?
No, I must be honest. I feel like there's just way too much variance in looking at specific games against specific opponents. Sure, he's had one return in 7 games or whatever it is, but there's no doubt that just variance plays a huge role in that. You've got to look at the fixture model, and for me, it's not the best fixture for Spurs. It's only recognised as a slightly above average fixture. So the fixture model is telling you that it's not necessarily an easy game, but at the same time, I think you've got to back Son to at least perform, at a similar level to that he would in a usual Premier League game.
Yeah, sure, and that's why, especially I suppose, maybe hearing that news, I don't know if I didn't have Son, maybe I'll be put off from bringing him in for this fixture. Well, actually, if I didn't have Son, I probably wouldn't be looking at bringing him over the next 4 or 5 game weeks anyway. But I suppose since I've had him since game week 1, I feel like, Crystal Palace, not a bad fixture, and whatever happens, I suppose. Talking about the defenders now, I see that Regulon has increased to 5.2. So Spurs are the only team to have not conceded a goal so far this season. But now, obviously, the fixtures are about to get a little bit more tricky over the next... Well, actually, look, it's Crystal Palace, then Chelsea, then Arsenal, which we don't take that serious anymore, and then Villa, Newcastle, West Ham, Manchester United, which takes us all the way up to game week 10. So I suppose at 4.5, well, now it's 4.6, Eric Dyer does offer quite a bit of value, but probably just as a rotation option, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, he's going to be very much a bench player from now onwards. I think he's going to add to my bench strength, if anything else.
Yeah.
At his price, I think Spurs have showed themselves to be a good defence this year.
And Nuno is a brilliant defensive manager anyway.
Exactly. So I think I'll bring him in for the odd game, but I think he's mainly going to be my bench fodder. I'm surprised by the mass transfers in of Regulon. I think that's probably a mistake. I think
a little bit knee-jerk as well, considering the upcoming fixtures as well.
I think it's again the sort of average player, seeing that he's done really well in the last, in the first 3 games. He's scored a lot of points, and now we bring him in. But if you pay attention to the expected data and the fixtures that are coming up, he only ranks 37th on my ranking system in terms of defenders.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you can see there's a massive gap between him and the top 20 at the moment. So I wouldn't suggest bringing a guy like that in at the moment.
And also when I'm paying 5 million plus for a defender, then I'm really banking on, or hoping, not hoping, but really banking on him getting attacking returns, because look, 5 million is not expensive, I suppose, but now you're spending that extra 0.5 because you're looking for something extra when spending that on a defender. And at this point in time, looking at the fixtures, I'm not that confident that he's going to get that much in terms of attacking returns anyway. And that's why I feel like a 4.5 million option in Spurs defense just feels right at the moment.
Yeah, there's so many much better options in my opinion. I think...
Does Dyer rank higher than Regulon at the moment in your model?
Let's have a quick look for you. Dyer's lower because his expected stats are much lower, so he's only 52nd. But at his price points, being bench fodder,
exactly,
there's less of an issue. If you start looking around the 5 million mark, I mean, you've got guys like Sace, you've got Matip, who's maybe going the most unnoticed out of any player at the moment. He's only 5 million. He could be, if he seems to have that centre back pairing with Van Dijk completely locked up. He might be the unnoticed man from Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few defenders flying under the radar at the moment. Obviously, him being one of them. I really like the look of Andreas Christensen as well, but I think he's 5 or 5.5. But well, from what I've seen, and also because Chelsea's defense looks so good, but regarding Chelsea, we'll get to them just now, I suppose. But like with them, we just wait for game week 7. But looking at it, I saw that and I was quite surprised by Reguilon's price rise, and like you say, it's probably just casual to have bumped up his price. The one player that came up with 2 goals and I think he played at West Brom last season, was Conor Gallagher. Now I can imagine that there's let's have a look here. I suppose he's not one of those that people are going to go crazy trying to transfer him in. But I must say, sure, what a surprise for him to come up with 2 goals against West Ham.
Yeah, I mean, he really looks like good value for I think he's 5.5 million.
He's 5.5 million. Yeah.
Look, we've only had three game weeks of data, so it's very difficult to extrapolate much from it. But he's ranked 7th on the ranking system so far, and if he can show consistent returns over 6 to 10 weeks, then I think he becomes a real option for
a good squad option.
Very good squad option.
Yeah, and then I'm looking for example, in the first week it was Sergi Canos who again from Brentford playing against Arsenal, who got 11 points in that game, and since then he hasn't returned. But I can imagine his numbers would look fairly okay considering as well. But for now, I agree with you. When it comes to those low price bargain midfielders, I'm just avoiding all of them right now.
Yeah, they're good cheap options that are more sort of well-known and reliable, and you can look at some of last season's data and then bring them in based on that. I think it's difficult over a small sample size, but I think it's actually nice this season. There's a lot of good budget options. You just have to sort of weed out the bandwagons from the good ones.
Time.
Exactly. Yeah. Timing is everything.
So I suppose, based on what you've spoken about, if there was ever an option to captain a Spurs player against Palace, would you consider it?
No, I think Spurs ranked quite low in this week's fixture.
Right. Yeah.
I think Man United are by far the favourites, and then I think we've got Chelsea actually in second with their fixture against Aston Villa, and then pick a City player if you want to play a game of roulette. That's in third. And then I think I'd go Salah against Leeds would be my 4th option.
Interesting one. Yeah, look, for me, obviously, it's a toss-up between Manchester United and Liverpool this week, and I think everybody feels that way. That's not a deep analysis over there,
Yeah, I mean, if you've got Ronaldo, I think Ronaldo is the captain. If you've got Lukaku, I think Lukaku is the second best. And if you're willing to take a gamble on a City player, then good luck to you. Otherwise, I think it's Salah. So I think it's sort of the usual suspects and the newcomer to the usual suspects, shall we call him?
Yeah, well, if I got a City player, then maybe it must just put captaincy on Ruben Diaz then. Because, yeah. And then next fixture is potentially a relegation 6-pointer. Yeah, Arsenal and Norwich. Now, look, do I really have to go into this type of fixture? Because to be fair, a few weeks ago, this would have been the time where we see, when we were talking about it during pre-season, this was the time that we're probably looking at Arsenal fixtures and thinking, okay, soon around game week 5, where the fixtures start to turn a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And but now it looks like something where we're just not even going to consider.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch to see if Arsenal do arrive as a different team and actually they had a couple of tough fixtures that they had a bit of a brick in the first one against Brentford. It'll be interesting to see if they turn up for a change and maybe start to become an option again. But I think until we see some definitive evidence, I think it's just an avoid.
Sure. Well, if Arteta can pick better players than Kolasinac and Holding and Chambers in defense, then maybe they have a chance. But yeah, apart from that over there, man, the fixtures look so great for Arsenal, and there's such Emile Smith Rowe now 5.4, Saka at 6.3. Those are such attractive price points for those type of players. Yet it's just quite annoying that we can't pick them because Arsenal are just so poor at the moment. But like you say, I think for me it will be one of those, like, looking at the fixtures. Yes, they got Norwich. Okay, I expect them to win, in fairness, because Norwich have just been so poor. But then there's Burnley as well, which again, Burnley is another team which have been quite poor this season. And then Spurs, Brighton, Palace, Villa. So it's kind of like some average fixtures, some decent fixtures in there. But over the next, like, probably say 3 or 4 games, I think we'll get a good indication of where we stand with Arsenal players.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we get an indication, and then game week 8's with their next really good attacking fixture against Crystal Palace at home. And they got Villa at home on game week 9. So if we can get an indication between game week 4 and 7 if Arsenal are worth considering again, then awesome. But until then, I think they're just sort of scratched off my list for now.
Yeah, okay. Then next up is Brentford and Brighton. Now, I think the Brentford hype seems to have died down. Funny enough, a lot of people, I see it was Pontus Jansson who's got a price increase of 4.6. So he obviously had a decent start. I mean, he's got an assist in against Villa, and then he had 2 clean sheets. But again, I feel that that's such a trap because they've got Brighton up in this fixture, then Wolves, and then Liverpool, West Ham, Chelsea, Leicester. And I feel like, whoa, for effectively 1 or 2 game weeks, it's just not a transfer that makes sense at the moment.
I mean, on my rating system, they don't have a positive attacking fixture in the next 6.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty poor. And,
Exactly.
And they've got two below average and 4 very bad fixtures. That's just not good. You're just gonna basically hemorrhage points if you're wasting away with a Brentford player.
So even with someone like an Ivan Toney, it just doesn't feel worth it at the moment, I suppose.
I think they're just better options. I mean, if you're stuck with Tony and you don't have any flexibility, I think you can probably hold. But I think if the quicker you can get him out, the better for you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Especially, I mean, he's probably he's still 6.5 now, but looking at there's so many options for just like for $1 million extra that have such higher ceilings and better fixtures and so on, that it just doesn't make sense to take that type of gamble at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then Brighton now. I don't know what to make with Brighton at the moment. I've seen some criticism of them, and I think it's kind of unfair because it's only been 3 games. I think they were unlucky to concede in the first game against Burnley because it was a goal that what's the big guy from Burnley, Tarkowski scored, and I think it was a foul personally from a set piece.
Yeah.
And then they kept a clean sheet against Watford. And then, yes, they conceded 2 goals against Everton, who actually Everton have been one of the bright starters this season, right? Now, so I think it's a bit of unfair knee-jerk to kind of, say that they're inconsistent because, I mean, they've won 2 out of 3 games. So, I mean, I don't know what people are expecting here at the moment. But I still have Feldman in my team, and I'm quite happy to keep him because, look, they don't have a great fixture run coming up. But, I mean, they've got Brentford up next, then Leicester, then Palace, then Arsenal, then Norwich. Some good alternating fixtures over there, and they've got City and Liverpool consecutively, game week 9, game week 10. But after that, Newcastle, Villa, Leeds, I think it's still okay to hold on to these players.
Yeah, their defensive fixtures aren't bad at all. Attacking wise, I think they're quite poor, but defensively, I mean, they've got 3 above average fixtures, 1 good fixture, and then from game week 9 it starts to get a little bit tougher when you have City and then Liverpool. But for now, I think if you've got them, there's no rush to get them out. I mean, I think you'll get decent points. Again, like if you've got easy options to upgrade to some of the top players, then go for it. But I wouldn't be unhappy with having Brighton. I've still got Sanchez, and I'm quite happy with him for now.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think the whole initially at the beginning of the season, people were saying there's so many value options at 4.5 million in defense. But I never fully bought into that idea of kind of like going defensive light and, and trying and putting that money into the attack. Because, and looking at the numbers, I feel like I'm fairly, look, there's a lot of 4.5, 4.6 million defenders in the top 10, top 20 at the moment. But after 3 games, I think it's very difficult to say that this is a definitive success right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, the trap we spoke about pre-season of doubling up on these sort of Brighton defenders, and it's the old rule that I try to that I spoke about again and again and again, is try not to double up. And the problem is that even when Brighton they've done reasonably well to start off with. It hasn't been terrible. They've got a clean sheet. 1 and 3 is not bad at all. But now suddenly when their fixtures get tough, if you're stuck with 2 Brighton defenders, you start
with
to
like
become
a
very
Sanchez
difficult.
and a Feldman or something like that there.
Yeah, or even some guys have gone, double defender with like Dunk and Feltman or something like that.
Oh, wow,
And
yeah.
then
It's something
used to
that it just doesn't make sense. And not for a team like Brighton, at least. Like, I can understand going, with like the defensively solid teams like City, Liverpool and so on, but just not Brighton. It just doesn't make sense to double up on their players anyway.
Yeah, I think if I was ever going to consider a double up, it might be Chelsea. But even then, I think it's just a dangerous game you play.
Yeah, I think there's enough options around anyway as well. Yeah,
exactly. Spread the risk.
Yeah, and then an interesting fixture, one that City actually have mixed results in, if I remember correctly, is away to Leicester. Now, Leicester have been kind of like, I don't know what to make of them. They won kind of scrappily against Wolves. But it's like, I really don't know what to do with, I know you mentioned Schmeichel at some point in time, I think during the previous episode. But I think maybe from Gameweek 5, 6, 7, there might be a consideration defensively. And they've got Brentford in Gameweek 9 and things like that over there. But at the moment, like as far as the attacking players is concerned, I'm just not interested in them right now.
Yeah, I think from game week 6, they look pretty good defensively. But Leicester haven't started like sort of as well as we expected. They haven't been terrible, but they haven't been great. I think we're expecting a little bit more after they beat City in the Community Shield. But this fixture seems to always bring some fireworks when it comes to Premier League fixtures. So
yeah, exactly. I'm
should be a
looking
good one
forward
to
to
watch.
this game. If I get a chance to watch it, I'd like to actually see this one because it's always an interesting game.
Look, I think City are big favourites to win, and I think they should take it home quite easily. But you never know when it comes to Leicester.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think we spoke enough about City. If you have it in you, if your gambling instincts kicks in and you feel you want to take a punt on a City player, then go for it. If not, you know the inherent risk you take when getting involved with City players.
Yeah, it's all comes down to minutes. But I mean, they've got so many options: Mahrez, Sterling, Torres, Jesus, Gundogan, Grealish. I mean, there's no shortage of options, but it's going to be just a question of who gets the minutes.
Yeah, and Torres at 7.1 is very tempting. But I don't know, and I'll have to decide on that one. If there's nothing else that if there's no other players I can find in that bracket, I'll probably just take a punt maybe in a week's time.
Yeah, I saw a very, very funny tweet this week where someone said, Mahrez has become Pep's number 1 guy. He's surely gonna start the season strong and play all the games. That was like game week 1. Then game week 2, Mahrez dropped, and then like Torres, he's become Pep's guy. He's having a fantastic season. Surely he's the guy. He's the new one that Pep trusts. And then they put game week 4 drops, and you almost expect it. You're almost waiting for it to happen when that team sheet comes out and he's not on it, and that's the risk you take.
Yeah, Grealish is an interesting one because he's played I think 90 minutes and 80 minutes and 90 minutes. So, but look, with City players, they're always good value, I suppose, to get you some type of returns. But it's a case of pick one and hopefully they come through for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then let's have a look. Next fixture is probably the fixture that everybody's targeting: Manchester United versus Newcastle. for various reasons. Obviously, people are losing their minds. We spoke about this previous episode. Probably the best fixture for captaincy, right?
Yeah, it's by far the best. You know, United are at plus 1.53 in my model, and the next best Chelsea are only at plus 1.18. So it's quite a significant difference. I think if you have Ronaldo, I think captain him. If you have Bruno, wait for the team sheet. And if Ronaldo's not on it, captain him. Otherwise, captain someone else.
Now, the interesting one is Greenwood. So he didn't go on international duty, so I'm assuming that because of that he'll play. Okay, and well, I'm assuming he'll play. That's a very, very difficult one, right? But I don't think that Ole will just drop him now, because you know I think, you know, he's really one of the favorites and he's an amazing player, right? So probably one of the best young players of the world, if not the best. Now, if you have him, would you ever? Okay, I know that you have him. I've transferred him in now as well. Do you think, like, let's say for example, if you don't have a Bruno in your team and you don't have Ronaldo in your team, do you think he's worth pushing the captain's armband on him?
So I don't have Bruno, I don't have Ronaldo, and 99% probably won't have those two by the time the game week starts.
Yeah.
If I knew 100% that he was going to start, I would captain him. I think there's just this inch of doubt that we don't quite know if he's going to start. I believe he's had a brilliant start to the season, and I'm relatively certain that he'll start, but I'm not certain enough to put the captain armband on him. So unfortunately for me, I'm just not willing to take the risk on if I've got the slightest bit of doubt on a player's minutes, then I'd rather not put the captain armband on them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Look, I've kind of, it's kind of crossed my mind, but I'll be honest when I say, like, I haven't given serious thought to it to say, okay, let me captain Greenwood, but it's definitely one that, maybe I'll talk myself into it, but from now till the deadline. But I think it's very, very unlikely that I'll take that type of risk now as well. And it's still so early in the season to be going that risky, So yeah, and with Newcastle, I think there's nothing to talk about over there. They just look so poor defensively at the moment. Wilson is always that player we know is thereabouts, so he'll probably get goals, once in a while. Because he's a fairly reliable scorer, but in terms of, there's just no other assets over there, and they're looking odds on for relegation at the moment. Well, there is Joe Willock, who did so well recently. I mean, recently at the ending of last season. Yeah. But apart from that over there, maybe he'll come into consideration if he hits some form. But at the moment, in Newcastle, nothing going on there for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had Willock on my watch list from last season's data, and so when Newcastle's fixtures turn and maybe they have a run of a few good ones, I think him and Wilson will be interesting options for sure. Wilson's like a banker option. He always produces the goods, but against United away, I think this is a very, very poor attacking fixture. And so far on the fixture ticker, there hasn't been a single goal scored in games that are flagged very, very poor. So it's not looking good for Wilson owners, which I'm one of, unfortunately.
What you're saying is your model is amazing, and it's and it's giving you the most accurate prediction.
Yeah, well, it's been pretty good with clean sheets. It's got 6 out of 6 correct so far in terms of the best fixture. So yeah, it's been good.
Awesome. Well, look, I followed it for getting Dyer in, and he paid off same time, got me 7 points, so I can't complain. And Southampton and West Ham. So Southampton seem to have kind of, resuscitated themselves somewhat. I mean, they still look very poor, but we considering, like, we expected fireworks in Gameweek 2 against Manchester United. That didn't happen. But again, you did mention it building up to that fixture that your model wasn't predicting it as being the most easiest fixture. But they've, but they still haven't won a game. And so the question is, do you think that they still essentially relegation candidates at the moment?
I think it's going to be a battle for sure. I think the interesting part is that their fixture against Newcastle last week, where they showed much better signs. I think they deserved probably to win that game. Was a much better fixture for them on the attacking model, and West Ham is color coded the same. So I think because West Ham have conceded quite a few goals this season already, I think you can expect some attacking returns from Southampton for sure in this fixture. Unfortunately, they've got City straight away in game week 5, which is just terrible, and then Chelsea in game week 7. So they've got 2 really bad ones coming up in the next 4. But I would, if I had a 1 week punt this week, and I had, if I was wildcarding next week, or I just wanted to bring in a player literally for this game, Southampton would be on my list. Especially with they've got a lot of very cheap options, and if you strap for cash, I think a 1 week punt for sure. I think El Yunusi looked fantastic last week.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, his attacking numbers look great actually. Yeah. So, that's an interesting one, and I suppose maybe it'll be worth having a look at players like, is it Adam Armstrong and so on, at 6 million. Yeah.
And Genepo, I think, as well.
Yes,
that's
good stats. Right. Yeah. And what's Genepo is 5.5. Yeah. So a good price point there as well. And then there's Walcott banging around there at 5.9, which I suppose is
I'm still burned from picking Walcott when he was playing for Arsenal.
Yeah. So you have a long memory there. You haven't forgiven. Yeah. And then West Ham options. So I think when during preseason you mentioned West Ham and you said, look, and in terms of defensively, the fixtures don't look great, and so far that's kind of been the case.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had Soufal in their teams, for example, and he's got 1 assist so far, which was against Leicester, but no clean sheets and a total of 7 points at the moment. And looking at the fixtures, Southampton up next, which, like you said, Southampton could be a good attacking punt for this weekend. But then it's Manchester United, Leeds, then Brentford, then Everton, Spurs, Villa, Liverpool, Wolves, City. That takes you right up until game week 14. It's not the best fixtures for them defensively as well.
No, I still wouldn't be picking West Ham defenders, and like you mentioned, we spoke about it pre-season, and timing is everything. Soufal and Cresswell had fantastic seasons last year, but you want to time the attacking returns with the clean sheet potential, and there's just no clean sheet potential for me with West Ham at the moment. They'll be their best fixtures Brentford at home in game week 7, so they've got a chance there. But other than that, it looks pretty dim, and you want that combination when it comes to defenders. You want that attacking potential, but you also want to be trying to pick a few clean sheets, in between.
Yeah, and like I was telling you earlier, like if I'm paying 5 million for someone, if I'm paying that extra 0.5 for a defender, then I do want those attacking returns as well, because that's what you essentially banking on, and that doesn't seem to be happening either. And then, while we're still on West Ham, the FPL legend, the king of FPL at the moment, Mikel Antonio, is now playing international football. He made his debut for Jamaica the other day. Why is he straining his hamstrings like this, man? He should be resting, keeping his thighs on ice or whatever it is to keep his hamstrings in good shape.
Yeah, you want to wrap him up in bubble wrap after the game and just store him until the next one.
Some cryogenic chamber or whatever it is, and just keep him. But he's 50.2% owned at the moment. He's 7.9 now. Crazy stuff. It still looks like he's got some mileage in his legs, hopefully. And because I suppose from an attacking potential, defensively the fixtures don't look great, but attacking it does look good. So
yeah, attacking is good. It's not fantastic, but
it does get a little bit worse now.
Yeah, and Antonio's numbers are just so amazing that he for me he's absolutely must own at this point. If you didn't have him from the start of the season, then you need to get him as soon as possible. Like, he is just a must-own player, and I'm surprised his ownership's only 50%, because realistically he should be in 100% of teams at the moment.
Yeah, especially at that price, it just makes
his price is just way too good.
Imagine he's now the same price as Bamford. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the game? Yeah, so that's an interesting one. And then, okay, so let me ask you this question, because Southampton haven't looked great defensively, right? If I always ask this question, and this is my pick for the week, right? If you're feeling extra spicy, some hot sauce, does Antonio become your consideration for captaincy option against Southampton, the leftist of left field options?
I mean, I don't even think it's left field. I think he's absolutely the form player at the moment, and going with a form player in terms of captaincy is usually the right way to go. For me, the fixture's just not good enough. I'd rather go with Salah, who's also the form player, I think Salah against Leeds, Leeds defense for me is just wide open, and I would go with the tried and tested myself, but I can definitely see Antonio being one of the options.
Yeah, definitely. I think what was nice about Gameweek 3 is, I think we spoke about it in the previous episode, was that it was nice to have a variety of captains compared to the first two game weeks where it was almost cut and dried between Salah and Bruno. And it adds a bit of excitement to the game, but it gives you more options to think about, and your captaincy can be a genuine differential. But this week doesn't seem like it'll be one of those, because I think with the Newcastle and Leeds fixtures for Manchester United and Liverpool, definitely the captaincy will be very high on those two teams. But Antonio just looks such great value at the moment.
Yeah, he does. He looks fantastic.
Yeah. And then the team of the moment, I suppose, where they haven't won a game so far. I think it's so unlucky when they've actually been producing good numbers, defensively, attacking-wise as well, maybe. And just looking at Wolves with the fixtures coming up now, it looks really great. That's why I brought in Raul Jimenez as well and now he plays against Watford. So the question is now, it's always an issue with these type of players where, Raul Jimenez, lots of shots in the box, Traore creating lots of chances. Defensively, they look quite good. I mean, you've mentioned Romain's size, What convinces you that Wolves is not a trap at the moment?
Well, I went Jimenez, and I've sort of been playing with 10 men for the last two game weeks because I had to do it early, and so I've only picked up the 2 points from him in games that I really didn't want to own him, but I made the transfer early because he was the best long-term option, and he's a tried and tested FPL player, and that's always gives me a lot more confidence. Yeah. From previous seasons that he can convert chances.
And people don't remember. It's amazing what short memories we have. But he scored like 180 points or something like that for 2 consecutive seasons, which is absolutely amazing in a team that doesn't play the most expansive football either.
Exactly, he's an FPL legend, and
legend.
I'm very happy to have in my team. The question mark for me is Traore, because he's posting incredible expected numbers, but has 0% conversion at the moment. And
I do not trust Traore. Yeah. He will never come close to my team. I had him like 2 seasons ago, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Yes, he gets the returns here and there, but it just doesn't feel like, not last season, the season before, I think he was he finished much more better. But since, it was the season that Liverpool won the league where he actually did quite well. But that was like the anomaly season for him. I just don't trust him enough.
Yeah, his conversion rate is what worries me. If you can see him starting to convert some chances, then his stats are way too good to ignore. I've seen a lot of wildcard, or pretty much every wildcard draft I've seen has got him in it. And with the stats, you can understand why. But I think for me, you've got to at least start seeing a 50% conversion or better to be able to bring a player in.
Yeah, I think people are really looking at him as a budget enabler, but the fact of the matter is even Trincao, is not, people are looking at him as well as a possible budget enabler. But I think especially with those players, like you say, not tried and tested players, and that's why I wouldn't be going near them at the moment.
Yeah, they'll enable you. They'll enable you to 100 xg and 0 points. So that's the problem.
Yeah, that's right. And then Huang He-Chan Huang, he was brilliant at Salzburg. I saw him playing in the Champions League. I'm sure you may remember him playing against Liverpool in the same team as Minamino and so on. They did really well, and so he'll be an interesting one at 5.5, and he's classified as a forward.
Yeah, I think one to watch for sure. Let's
I'll probably put him on my watch list,
exactly.
My mental watch list for now at least, because he looked an absolutely amazing player for Salzburg, and even with the team with Haaland and like I said, Minamino, he didn't look out of place. He looked absolutely amazing, and if he can replicate that type of form, I think he could really do some damage. And at 5.5 million, it looks like such an attractive price point as well.
Yeah, the price looks good, so let's see how he goes.
Yeah, and as for Watford, I'm kind of like a bit conflicted now because they do have a bit of a fixture turn of sorts. So they've got Wolves up next, but if Bachmann decides to keep a clean sheet the week that I bring in Jimenez, then I'll be really upset. But after that, it's Norwich, Newcastle, and then Leeds, Liverpool, Everton. So it's not the best fixtures, but again, if I'm wildcarding, I'll probably change him out anyway. But maybe there's a few more fixtures. It takes up till about Gameweek 7 when we may wildcard anyway. His fixtures are quite good, so I'm fine with him over there. But apart from that, there Watford, I'm really not interested at the moment. And I think we've spoken about them previously, where the typical players like Sa and Dennis, Emmanuel Dennis, we'll keep them on our watch list, but really they don't look that great value at the moment.
No, I think the fixtures are just too poor. Watford are rated 18th in attack for the next 6, and the defense is a little bit better. They're 14th for defense. So if anything, I think Bachmann is the option. But other than that, I would avoid.
Yeah, that's right. And let's have a look. And the next fixture is quite an interesting one: Chelsea and Villa. So the last time these two teams played each other, Villa beat Chelsea on the closing day of last season, and Aston Villa, for all the transfers that they've made or whatever, don't really look that much of a cohesive unit, which I'm really thankful for the fact that Ings vastly overperformed on his XG, and to be honest, he's something of an FPL legend as well, and an amazing player. But looking at that now, I think, yes, if you probably don't have the transfers, you could probably just hold on to Ings for one more week. But looking at the next few fixtures as well, doesn't look good for them at the moment. And even for the likes of holding on to someone like Buendia or whatever it is, they just don't look great attacking at the moment. They're not putting up great numbers.
No, they're obviously missing Grealish to a massive extent, and we saw that last season. Without Grealish, they were a completely different team.
Yeah.
But I think their second best player for me is Watkins, and he's also been missing. So, it's almost. I think the story of the season this year is going to be transferring players out when they start facing Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea's defense is the best in the league, and I'm almost timing my transfers to get rid of players as they play Chelsea.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think after seeing how well they did in that second half versus Liverpool as well, that was an indication of how well drilled that defense is at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's first class defense.
Yeah, and And then Chelsea, I suppose you did mention them in passing, like they earlier in terms of captaincy, Lukaku may be an option as well. But like we said, Manchester United playing Newcastle, Liverpool against Leeds, it will really, it's a spicy option, but really not one that you look at and think it's a must do.
Well, I mean, if I own Lukaku, I think I'm captaining him. I think it's, for me, it's definitely the second best fixture behind the United fixture.
Ahead of Leeds as well.
Yeah, it's ahead of Leeds. Yeah, so
That's interesting.
I would go Lukaku before I went Salah. I would go Lukaku over Greenwood or Bruno. The only person I would captain over Lukaku is Ronal-Do.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, well, maybe I should go and take a hit and bring a wild card and bring Lukaku in just for this week.
Yeah, the problem is the next two with Chelsea, because they've got two tough ones after that.
Two tough ones coming up.
Yeah.
And then, look, for me, it's a Chelsea attack, Chelsea defense. Even Mason Mount is definitely one I'll be looking at over the next few weeks because he's well priced. And maybe I might consider bringing him in, but because he seems like one of those players who are fairly nailed on as well.
Yeah, he's definitely nailed on, and I think, he seems the best player in their midfield. The problem with the others is just game time. Havertz is a bit concerning with game time. Pulisic is also they're posting slightly better numbers, but you can't rely on them. And I think you'll expect Mount's numbers to probably improve with Lukaku as well, because I think Lukaku could be getting it on the end of some of his very good balls into the box.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with last season with Timo Werner as well. It was a bit of a tricky one because he was getting good chances, but he just wasn't putting them away. And we would largely expect Lukaku to be a big improvement on that. So I think it's between Luka. I wouldn't double up on Lukaku and Mount. I mean, we spoke about doubling up on certain teams' players, and I don't think they're worth the double up, but definitely a defender and one of those attackers coming in for me.
Yeah, I think if you can get one of them, and for me in defence, James is. I mean, he looks phenomenal. And when he comes back from suspension, I think he's going to be a must-own for me. I think even more valuable than Trent. It's actually interesting if you compare their numbers by minute. James's numbers are way better than even Trent's at the moment, and Trent's had an absolute flyer to the season. So. I think from Gameweek 7 for me, James is locked in, and then it's a question of whether I think for me Lukaku is as well. So I think I'm going James and Lukaku.
Yeah, same here. From what I've seen so far, I'm also fairly fixed in on that over there. But the game changes so quickly, and I might decide to use Mount as a 7.5 million option so that I can free up money elsewhere. But I think. That would be like almost, if I want to call it, worst case scenario. But I think when I look at the fixtures and I'm looking at my team shape, I think that's the route I'm going as well.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Trent. I mean, his next few fixtures: Leeds, Crystal Palace, Brentford. Then he's got City, then Watford, then Manchester United and Brighton. So it'll be interesting to see if his numbers improve as such. But at times when I saw it, the eye test, I felt like even Tsimikas was getting better numbers, and getting into better position. So it's interesting, when now we're talking about Trent in relation to James, and James definitely has looked like the pick of all the attacking fullbacks.
Yeah, he's number one on my rankings. I think followed closely by Cancelo, and interestingly enough, with Wolves' fixture turn, Saiss is actually ahead of Trent very slightly in terms of the attacking output return sort of predicted in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, and Saiss is definitely on my. I won't even call it watch list. He's probably just a few clicks away from being transferred into my team because the fixtures are just so good over there. Yeah. And if I was wildcarding, I'd probably bring in either him or Sa. the Jose Sa into my
team.
team, because like I said, with Bachmann being so poor as my goalkeeper, I may consider him. But then again, the other option is that the size offers you set piece threat and so on, and he seems very, very good value at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then let's now our game, I suppose, with Salah being the captain, is our favorite captaincy pick, and I'll be honest, definitely mine as well. This is a fixture that I think last season when we went there, we ended up drawing. Later on, we conceded a goal, which was really, really frustrating. Almost like a story of our season where we bombarded their goal in the first half, didn't take our chances, then got sucker punched at the end and ended up drawing the game. But this season, yes, we do offer up a few big chances along the way, but we look so much more better defensively. What you expecting out of this type of fixture coming up?
Yeah, I think this might be one with a lot of goals. Liverpool's defence is looking a lot better, and I'm hoping that we can keep a clean sheet. But Leeds are such a good attacking team, so you almost expect them to score at least one. But Liverpool's attack seems to be clicking again as well. Everything seems to be clicking again with Virgil back. So I think we'll see goals for sure in this fixture.
Yeah, same here. Like I'm looking at it, and we offered up a good chance to Norwich in the opening week. We offered up some good chances to Burnley at the end, and it was thanks to Alisson's keeping that we actually kept clean sheets. And then obviously the Chelsea game was completely different challenge for us. But the Leeds game, you would think that they have better finishers than Norwich and Burnley. So if you offer up those type of chances again, you'd feel like even if you're offering up like 2 or 3 of them, they probably take one of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Bamford and Rafinha are just waiting to get the end of some of those chances that the other teams have had so far.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think I've mentioned it in previous episodes. Like, I always feel Liverpool's defense, I suppose, with most defenses throughout the league, they kind of settle as the season progresses. But specifically, I've noticed a trend with Liverpool defense, specifically over the last 4 seasons, is where even the season that we won the league, we had good defensive numbers, but we kept on conceding like one goal every single game, even though we were winning. But it come like November onwards, we went on a run of like 9 or 10 games where we didn't concede a goal. And this Liverpool defense seems to have like the same type of vibe around them, where they opened up with the 2 clean sheets, then they conceded again, from a set piece against Chelsea. But I just feel like, as the season progresses and the whole team is more settled, we'll probably see some of those mistakes being cut out.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Liverpool defense will be strong this season. Hopefully this will be a good test for them early on. But I think you're right. I think it just gets stronger and stronger as fitness comes back and a bit of game time comes back for Virgil.
And Robertson played during the internationals as well, so I'm expecting him to be. He looked a bit rusty against Chelsea. In fact, I think both him and Sadio Mane were very poor in that game. And looking at the way Tsimikas played the first 2 games, I would have probably hooked one of them sooner to get Tsimikas on. And but I would expect a better performance from Robertson against Leeds. And Leeds, I suppose we've spoken about them. They've got Newcastle after this, so I'll be looking at some of their, maybe a Bamford or something from Gameweek 5 onwards. And the last fixture is Everton and Burnley. Now, You know, we it seems like we always have a lot to say about Everton since we started the show, you know, because we've never known what to make about it. But they seem to have a bit of a resilience about them. Calvert-Lewin seems to, you know, he's got three goals, 3 out of 3 so far. Defensively, they haven't looked that great. They just kept the one clean sheet against Brighton. But I mean, it's 2 wins and a draw, which is more than maybe what we expected of them at when the season started.
Yeah, they've looked good. I think this is a good fixture for both attack and defence against Burnley, so they should get a clean sheet. You know, this is definitely one of the better fixtures for them. So if you've got Everton players, fantastic. And I think they're a hold. Their fixtures are generally pretty good going forward.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's Burnley, Villa, Norwich, then Manchester United in game week 7, but then West Ham, Watford, Wolves. That takes you up to game week 10. Then from game week 11 and 12, Spurs and City, and then game week 14, Liverpool. But up until, say, game week 10, the fixtures actually don't look that bad.
Yeah, they look pretty good. And I think if you've got Everton players, I think holding them till game week 10 makes complete sense.
So would you say for both defense and attacking, or just attacking only?
No, I think for both. Attacking is obviously better. I think they're ranked 5th in the attacking fixtures for the next 6, and 7th in defence. So defence is a little bit more shaky. But if those defenders are getting some attacking returns as well, then that starts to become really worthwhile. So I think your clear options are Calvert-Lewin and Luca Dean. You know, if possibly look at even bringing one of those guys in if you don't have them.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you know that's the beauty of having so many good, well-priced forwards. It seems like there's so much value to be had there at the moment that you could possibly get away with playing a midfield 4, I suppose. But it's gonna. I think as long as you stay focused and not concentrate on the premiums too much and wildcard to get players like Ronal-Do in, you'll see that there's actually so much of value out there at the moment.
Yeah, there's huge value. I mean, there's even Gray who scored a cracker. His numbers, XG numbers, don't look fantastic, but he's converted some really, really tough chances. So he'll be one to watch as well. If his XG numbers start to improve, then he could also become a very good budget enabler.
Yeah, and I'm seeing him in a lot of wildcard teams as well. So he looks like an interesting option over there. But yeah, especially with him, I'm taking your advice from earlier is that if they're not proven players, no track record, I'm just swerving for now. I don't think it's worth the risk. But he's already 5.6 now, so that's quite interesting as well.
I mean, if he goes all the way up to 6.5, it's still good value if he's performing. So
even at 7. So.
Yeah, so I don't think you have to worry about being late to the party with a guy like that. I think it's better to not jump on a bandwagon that doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's better just to sit back, let the guy prove himself, and if he does, then bring him in. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Definitely. And the one player that I'm also interestingly seeing in a lot of wildcard drafts is Allen because he's 4.5. but yeah, so yeah. And since you've mentioned the fact that Everton versus Burnley is a good attacking and defensive fixture against Burnley, look, we know that Calvert-Lewin doesn't really have a high ceiling. He's never been that. He's had like the hat-trick against West Brom last season, for example, which it feels like an outlier, but generally he was a steady accumulator. But if you had to take a punt in captaincy against Burnley, what would convince you to put captaincy on Calvert-Lewin?
I mean, there's not a lot that would convince me. The problem is that he's taken 2 penalties already, and that hugely skews his data, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing that's quite interesting is that if Everton get 2 penalties in a game, he's not going to be taking the second one. There was a whole mix-up in the last game where Richarlison wanted to take the penalty, and they basically had to rip the ball out of his hands to give it to DCL. So. Yeah, it doesn't inspire huge confidence. I think he's not a guy for me that's going to get those massive scores, and that's who you want in a captain pick. Someone who can get 20 points in a game, and you can have that phenomenal game week.
And talking about penalties, is it Ronaldo or Fernandes? We need to figure this out now, and decide because look, yes, it became quite annoying that people always, dig out Bruno for penalties because he's so much more than that, right? He's an amazing player, but you can't avoid the fact that penalties plays a big part in choosing a player. So be it a Salah versus Mane at the same price, you go for Salah. Well, obviously Salah's just a better finisher anyway, but again, you look, it was like De Bruyne and Sterling or whatever it is now. Yes, this so at 12.5, obviously penalties are going to play a part in it if that's going to become a differentiating factor. Now we can also talk about the fact that maybe they won't get, not just Manchester United, but all teams may not get that many penalties this season. Does that play a part in your thinking in between Ronaldo and Fernandes?
Well, it actually played quite a large role in my thinking of not bringing in Bruno from Gameweek 1. That it's much harder to win penalties this year, and a large portion of his points. One thing in FPL is you can't think of a player in terms of how good they are. You've got to think of them in terms of how many points they can score you. And there are a lot of players in the Premier League that are exceptional players, but they don't give you points. And if you take Bruno's penalties away, it becomes a huge problem. And even if you just, from my calculations, at his price, if you just took some of the penalties away, he already starts to become very, very shaky ground.
Yeah, I was reading some stats the other day. I can't remember who put it up on Twitter or something like that. But since the turn of the year, his non-penalty expected goals is very, very low. Yeah. He's actually quite far down the ranking. And it makes sense because he tailed off quite a bit towards the ending of last season. I think you spoke about it during preseason as well, where you said you almost timed it perfectly, where his numbers weren't looking good. You got him out of your team, and it was perfect timing. So it's definitely something to look at. Where, like I say, apart from it being a running joke by some cretins on social media, but the fact of the matter is it does become a differentiating factor in FPL. And at this point in time, especially if Ronaldo wants to be on free kicks and penalties or whatever it is, even if they start sharing the burden, it really doesn't help you in FPL terms. So
I don't see Bruno taking the penalties. I think Ronaldo is one of those characters where he wants to win the awards and he wants to be scoring the goals, and like we've seen for country, he takes the penalties. And there was a photo posted with Bruno picking up the ball and handing it to Ronaldo, in the Portugal game, and it's going to be exactly the same. I think at United, I think Bruno will pick up the ball and hand it to Ronaldo, and Ronaldo will take the penalty.
Yeah, look, and that's going to be quite an interesting one. But anyway, I think that wraps up our Game Week 4 build-up. And hopefully we can continue where we left off from the first 3 game weeks, and see more green arrows from now until the ending of the season. Oh well, I suppose if you're number 1, then you wouldn't want to see at least you want to see a grey line next to your name, right? But,
I've never had that problem before, unfortunately.
I've never seen a grey line next to my name, unless it was one of those head-to-head leagues or whatever it is. But look, let's see how it pans out. Let's see if people's wildcards pay off. And let's see if Ronaldo bags against Newcastle like we expecting. Cheers, everyone. Cheers, Greg.
Thanks, Clyde. Good luck for the weekend.
Cheers, man.